Welcome to Rethink Community Podcast, brought to you by Think Tank, Inc. I'm your host, John White. For the last 10 years, Think Tank has been helping people and organizations step into the stories of those who face poverty every day. We believe that stories have the power to break through our opinions and positions and bring us together. On this podcast, we bring you real stories from real people who have grappled with poverty, faced obstacles, blazed new trails, and forged unlikely relationships. How could a convicted drug dealer and the federal judge who sentenced him form a meaningful relationship? And what happens when they do? You'll find out in today's episode of Rethink Community. I'd like to welcome everyone to another Think Tank podcast in Central Ohio. And with me, I have the pleasure of introducing Judge Walter Rice, who is a Southern District federal judge in Southwestern Ohio and is known throughout Ohio and the country for his great work, just not in the bench, but his great work in rebuilding our community and rebuilding our criminal justice system. And with me is Tony Ruby, who is an advocate in the greater Dayton area, who now uses all of his incredible experience of incarceration and his story to help other adults that are in that same challenge. And we are honored to welcome Ruby and Judge Rice.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Tony, my first question to you, how in the world did you meet this fellow on your left? Tell me your story.
Well, I met this fellow in 1999, and I happened to be before him in the judge panel. And I went into a courtroom, and he happens to sentence me to 70 months incarceration.
This gentleman on your left?
This gentleman right here sentenced me to 70 months of incarceration in the federal prison system. So that was my first encounter with him. So didn't know him. Prior to that, didn't have no reason to know him, but it was a wonderful experience. And as I look back, it was a wonderful experience.
And Judge, how did you meet? And do you recall?
I recall,
Tony?
I do indeed, but very few details, John. I recall he was a very intelligent man. I recall almost nothing about the charges that brought him before me.
So you spent 70 months.
Yes.
And well, tell us your experience in incarceration. What did that do for Tony in your recovery process?
Well, I believe once I got sentenced, it was almost as the first couple years, I think I probably would have never wanted to speak to Mr. Rice or nobody in the system. So my first couple years, I sat in there and, you leaving a family. I already had a family. I had worked for the city for 11 years, and I was already working, doing the community kind of stuff, teaching baseball, basketball, and had my 3 wonderful boys. So to be taken away from them was kind of different. It was just nothing you just sign up for. So as I was incarcerated, I kind of looked back like, man, I wonder why the judge just didn't give me probation, because it was charges prior to my lifestyle that I did do. I had a false declaration for the grand jury, which I lied. So I just figured I could have not went. But being incarcerated really helped me to where I'm at today, because I see what they feel. I can relate to not only that they was locked up, but I can relate to the way you're being treated, the way that people say that it's crazy there. I think that my experience allowed me to see the craziness, and it was a beautiful thing that I look back at. I would never raise my hand to go, but I wouldn't raise my hand and say I don't like where I'm at now neither.
So you had a life transformation experience in incarceration.
Yes, I had a life change in 1993. I got saved and gave my life to the Lord in 93. So they came back on the charges in 1999. So I'd already changed my life prior to going.
I see.
So when I went in prison, I didn't have to go and ask for Jesus. I already took him with me. So in prison, I just was really looking around like, wow.
Yeah. Well, tell me how you came out of incarceration, and how did you reintroduce or reengage with the judge who sentenced you?
Well, honestly, I wrote him. I kept writing him. I'm telling you, I wrote him to try to get out every time, and he would write back. It was not one time he never wrote back.
He would write back?
Yes, he would write back. I would write him, and he would write back. And, some of the my pastors and them would talk to him when they see him on the streets and be like, why you do that to Ruby? And he would always tell them the same story. His hands was tied. And
the judge's hands was tied
yes,
in his sentence.
Yes, and he would always say this sentence. So he wrote me a letter, and he said, I look forward to seeing you when you come home and come in my office and give me a handshake. So once I got out, I didn't go right there. No, I really didn't go right there to shake his hand.
Why didn't you want to go right there?
I mean, it's just, you're free to come home. It wasn't nothing against him. It's just, I wasn't in a rush to go shake the hand, but I knew that day was going to come. But I wasn't in a rush, So it took me a few years, and then I finally went in the courtroom and said, here I am. And he exactly knew who I was and gave me the handshake, and it's been on ever since.
So Judge, do you remember that day?
I do. I remember the letters we exchanged, and right about the time he came home was when I got involved in the reentry initiative generally. So I was delighted to see him. I don't recall the first few years after he got back, but I eventually started seeing him at different reentry events, and we became friends, and I consider him a dear friend.
And what was it that developed your friendship?
Well, it was very ironic because he's doing reentry work within the community. And so as I'm sitting in there listening to him do the reentry work, I'm listening to him, and I'm still remembering that letter saying, I can't wait till you come home and shake your hand. And then as he's doing these reentry, he's working with, reentry guys coming home. And I'm just looking like, wow, because I'm looking at him different, because not only did I go away, but now I'm looking at he's caring totally about other individuals. And I'm sitting there like, wow. And we had a beautiful lady, Kristen Kyer, that's passed, but she had made sure that I was part of the reentry. And as she was a probation officer, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna be part of the reentry. And as we get closer and closer, I begin to see him from the inside out, not just the outside in.
And what did you feel that was in the inside?
He cared just about the people, just like I did.
Judge, what, in your experience, what was the time in your life that you felt that you wanted to start giving back, meaning as you sentenced individuals to prison, but 97% of them return, and here you had an invitation for an inmate, someone who's incarcerated, to return to your courtroom, to return to your office as a friend, and having a cup of coffee with them. What made you want to do that? I think isn't that unique in your profession.
I don't think it's as unique, John, as you might think. And many judges today feel that their responsibility to people does not end at the time they're sentenced, that we need to do all we can to keep their hope up while they're incarcerated. And when they come home, help in any way we can to help them achieve some stability and successful reentry into the community. So I truly don't think I'm unique at all.
And what was it about your experience that kind of propelled you to begin this reentry work, that you've seen that this reentry work that is really a movement throughout the country of seeing incarcerated individuals with new eyes, with new opportunity, in a way that is really radical, in a way that is really very, very important to a country that sentences has 5% of the world's incarceration, but has 5% of the world's population, but 25% of the world's incarcerated. What made you want to do that? What was your experience?
My journey, John, began almost 20 years ago when I realized that I was sentencing the grandchildren of people I had sentenced when I first became a judge in 1969. I used to have people come to see me, as Mr. Ruby did, saying, I'm home, I want to do the right thing, I need a job, need a place to live. Can you help me? And I would always try to help John, but there was simply at that time, comparatively recently, no help out there for persons coming home from prison. And I just felt it was my obligation to try to help those men and women, basically very decent people who, for one reason or another, made some bad decisions leading to bad mistakes and bad acts, to help them to successfully readjust to the community. It's the right thing to do. It's the best public safety measure to ever come down the pike, because if people have helped themselves to reestablish themselves in the community, those people are givers, they're contributors rather than takers. So once I got involved, it became a passion for me, and it's something I hope to be involved in for the rest of my life.
How has Tony, with his leadership in the community, inspired you?
Tony has inspired me. Frankly, I have learned a lot more from him than I can imagine he ever learned from me. He's made me understand, not just intellectually, but in my heart, what people coming home from prison go through. He's helped me understand more than just intellectually the meaning of poverty, not that he was raised in poverty, but the circumstances that lead decent people into criminal activity. And the old adage, there but for the grace of God, is more than just a saying at this point. I deeply, deeply believe it. But along with all that, he has made sentencing more difficult for me.
Tell me, what really is that?
Really.
Oh my gosh!
Because I realize, even at my age, that the difference between someone standing before me and sitting where I am is an accident of birth. It's a difference in the opportunities that our families and our communities gave us, and being raised in poverty or in dysfunctional families. John, that's something that I know myself well enough to know that I didn't have the strength when I was young to have surmounted. So I think I am incredibly lucky, blessed, really. And I feel I've got to give some of that back to help others who were not as fortunate as I am.
And what, Judge, and I'll get back to Tony, what would you say to up and coming attorneys in our community, across our country, that want to serve on the bench and yet have found themselves to be somewhat isolated from the complexities of poverty and incarceration? What would you suggest and encourage them to do? Yes.
I would encourage them not to isolate themselves. Too many of my colleagues do just that. They believe their job ends at 5 o'clock. I don't see how they can understand the community. I don't see how they can understand the people that they interact with in court without understanding their community and the lives that people live. It is possible to be involved in your community without in any way sacrificing your impartiality or your objectivity. And that's what I would tell any new judge.
Tony, back to you. What is it the friendship with the judge who sentenced you here. It's been a long time since that happened.
Mm-hmm.
But how has it impacted your mind and your heart? How has it impacted your family? How does that impact your community in which you reside?
It's a major impact because it's something you probably can't see, but just to speak and for him knowing in our communication and our fellowship is understanding that incarceration never helped nobody. It just takes a guy away for years. And sometimes if you do 10 to 5, it's not the incarceration that really helped. So this relationship we got, even as I go into reentry, I get guys on their way to prison, but understanding even the judge listening to know that incarceration just ain't doing it. In this relationship that we got, we can talk on both ends because I'm coming from the criminal part, he's coming from the judicial part.
Mm-hmm.
And now that we can begin and open-mindedly talk, like he see it different now, I see it different. I see he got a job. So it makes me better in the community because I get to teach the guys really both sides. Like he's not really your enemy. You know, one time you would think the judge is your enemy, but it's a job. But then he's looking at the inmates or the guys that he's getting a sentence, and then he's looking at them as human beings, like the best thing for them. So it's been a blessing to see it because I can see it now without saying it. I can see the change, even when the next guy get the hammer. You know what I mean? It's like because now he understands him, and we talk. So it's been a blessing. The community see it. I mean, we see it. People probably like, man, how y'all even hang out and laugh? It's like, you know, it's like how you even hang with him? It's like,
aren't you guys the odd couple?
Odd,
in a sense,
it's odd. It's just because especially me, we get in the community because if you be honest, the community's basis. If you're a tattletale, you begin just like a teacher's pet. The teacher's pet was always a teacher's pet because he told what the students was doing. Yeah. But we don't have that relationship. I wasn't the teacher's pet. I wasn't the tattletale. This relationship came as genuine from the inside out. So we get a chance to really talk about our community, really, which is great.
And you're saying you both talk in the community. You have an audience, and what's the reaction of people who just this thing's upside down? It just doesn't work this way. You drove up together from Springfield into the studio, and you're friends, and you share lunches together. And what's the community supposed to think about this? Is this where we need to go in our communities, Tony? Judge?
Absolutely. I think the community needs to understand, and public skepticism is still the biggest obstacle for a successful reentry program. The public needs to understand that people who have gone through the system overwhelmingly are not bad people. They are decent people who, for one reason or another, made a wrong turn in their lives. And I like to say, and I firmly believe it, that in over 50 years as a judge, the number of bad people I have met, truly bad, I can count on less than the fingers of one hand. They are decent people. They deserve, if they're willing to do the hard work of reentering, they deserve everything, every bit of energy we can give them. I truly believe that. And I will tell you this, even though it's perhaps non-responsive to your question, Tony and others who have gone through the system have made me a better judge. I hope they've made me a better person, more compassionate, and more understanding. We can read books, John, and we can develop an intellectual understanding of different circumstances. But to really know people, to talk to them, that takes that understanding from the head into the heart. And that's what Tony has helped me develop.
That's what Tony has done for you. And what has the judge done for you?
He give me clout sometimes. That's funny, but he give me clout because people think because we cool, right, I got all the connections. So he give me a little clout that I don't got. You know what I mean? But they're like, oh, you got the judge, so I get more friends than I probably have to because they consider that I might have a superpowers. You know what I mean? But so that's funny. So it's really funny because they're like, oh yeah, he was the judge, he could do this. But in all, he just really give me a good understanding because he's knowledgeable. So it's just like, I don't see what the law's seen all the time. I was a criminal part of it. So as I get my life together with my family, and it's just awesome because it's like he didn't do it on purpose. I did it. You know what I mean? It's like, and we got a genuine friendship that we just be like laughing. Like he grew up totally different than Tony, and Tony grew up totally different from Judge. But when we get together, because of the human nature and the community, we get to see eye to eye. Like, it's crazy. You wouldn't even believe it because it'd be like, we can laugh and that's some of the stuff that you thought that we couldn't even laugh about. Like, wow. Because his job and my job is pretty much the same. We love the people.
You love the people.
We love the people.
And tell me what you're doing today.
Well, today I got a reentry. I'm working with the reentry, getting guys and girls, but we really mainly with the guys. I do ready for work. I get them jobs. So it's exciting to get a guy come from prison and he lead a county and 3 weeks later he working best day of his life. You know what I mean? So that's the excitement we get. And then we also run programs throughout the youth. So it's fine. It's not just me though. You look at me talking, but it's a team of us. It's not just me.
The power couple, the quintessential, I know that's a big word, of quintessential unlikely relationships.
The odd couple.
The odd couple that when folks see these two, they see actually what we should see everywhere in our community. And I guess it was intentionality.
Mm-hmm.
This just didn't happen. And I want to stress that, Judge. You were intentional about the invitation, extension. You didn't have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And the power of intentional relationships that cross economic lines, that cross racial lines, class lines, all those lines that we have in our community that can be, that need to be chipped away at.
John, you're 100% right. And I don't hold myself out as a paragon.
Right.
I'm simply saying that if we would take the time to get to know each other as people, those stereotypes that divide us would float away. I truly believe that. That's not only Tony and myself, that's across economic, social, racial lines. We simply need more of it.
Amen. And Tony, I know that he doesn't want to be a paragon or a paragon of virtue, but isn't it true that he just got a skyscraper named after him in the city of Dayton? It's true.
It's got to, yeah.
And so maybe not a paragon of virtue, but certainly a icon
Yes.
of setting an example and truly being light and salt in a place that's very dry.
Yes.
And dark. And so it's a great opportunity for you to be here. One last
word, and I hope you don't edit it out. It should never be forgotten that when you were in the legislature, long before successful reentry was an idea whose time had come, you picked up the torch and influenced far more people than I ever hope to influence, just by your spirit, your passion, and you deserve all the credit that you can get.
Thank you very much, Judge. Tony, thank you very much for being here. And it's another edition of our wonderful podcast, and my pleasure is all mine. Thank you. This has been the Rethink Community Podcast, brought to you by Think Tank, Inc., with music by Elijah Hamilton. Don't forget to subscribe to hear upcoming episodes featuring the stories of other courageous individuals we think you should know. And if you're part of an organization that would like to be better equipped to serve people in poverty, be sure to check out the resources we offer, including the Cost of Poverty Experience, or COPE, at thinktank-inc.org/COPE. Join the hundreds of businesses, schools, colleges, churches, and healthcare providers that have used the Cost of Poverty Experience, along with our other suite of tools and coaching to find new ways of thinking and responding to poverty.